Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. In today's video, I'm doing some spring thrift flips. For my first project, I'm going to be using this hardcover book that I thrifted. I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Premium Plus 2-in-1 primer in grey. I'm going to apply it with a paintbrush. I'm going to be applying it to the entire outside of the book, and I'm going to be doing 2 coats. Adding the primer is going to ensure that my paint is going to stick well, but it's also going to block the writing that's on the spine there from coming up through my other layers of paint, and also it will block any stains just in case there's stains on the book that I can't see. Once my primer is completely dry, I am then going to take out Paint Couture's embossing medium, and I'm going to be working with this stencil that I had in my stash. I'm applying the embossing medium with a palette knife just over the top of this fleur-de-lis design. I got a little bit in a section that I didn't want, but that is pretty easily fixed up. I'm then going to come in and add it to the right-hand side as well. Any areas that I get it where I don't want, I'll scrape off the excess, and then also I can use a wet wipe as well. Next, you can see that I have flipped the book upside down so that the wet embossing medium is out of the way, and I'm applying the same stencil in the other 2 corners. Once the designs in the corners are completely dry, I then took the same stencil and I'm just adding the embossing medium over the top of the script design. I don't want this to be perfect, I want it to be sort of looking like broken text, and I'm going to randomly position this text over the front cover of the book. Now these designs are going to be painted over, they're not going to be a main focus, but I am just layering in some interesting elements to give my piece more depth. I let the embossing medium dry completely and then took out my redesign Sorrento Laurels mold. I'm going to add some cornstarch to the center design. I'm then going to be working air dry clay into the design. You can see I'm rolling it up first, and then I'm starting to press it into the details, and I'll be using my fingers and pushing the clay out to the left and right until I have a clean line. I'm then going to bend and flex the mold and then flip it over, and gravity is going to help me get the design out. Now this is very intricate, very thin pieces, so I did have a little bit of breakage, but this is very easily fixed and you can glue them back together. I'm then going to apply some wood glue to the back of my casting and position it on the spine of the book. To glue down the rest of the design, I added my glue directly to the spine of the book where the mold is going to go. That just made it a little bit easier to ensure that I had all of the area covered. It was all glued down really well. I'm then going to be pressing down the mold to make sure I've got good contact and also shaping it to the shape of the spine. I let my castings dry, and now I'm using Paint Couture's Duck Egg chalk paint. I'm going to be adding that over the top of the front section of the book first. You can see I'm applying the paint and I'm adjusting the direction of my brush strokes to make sure that I'm getting that paint into the details of the embossed design, and I'm going to be applying 2 even coats. When the duck egg paint was dry, I moved on to Farmhouse Linen chalk paint by Paint Couture, and I'm going to be applying this to the spine of the book and over the top of the castings, and also to the back section of the book. I'm not too worried if I get paint in the duck egg section because I could wipe it off with a wet wipe, or I could go back over the top of it with that duck egg color. When my paint was completely dry, I then took out Redesign's Salon Diane transfer. I've already cut this out. I've already used this transfer before. I'm just positioning that down the bottom there and then pressing down. I'm using the transfer stick that comes with the transfer to rub and burnish that design down. And you'll see I'm sort of going over the entire design first to make sure it's adhered down, and then I've picked up a corner and I'm rubbing as I am lifting that plastic up. Now this was a little bit more involved because I do have the raised stenciling underneath, so I definitely had to make sure that I had all of that transferred down and secured properly, especially over those uneven areas. On the right you can see I just trimmed off the excess transfer there. I can use that elsewhere, and I'm just going to continue until I have the whole design transferred down. When I had the whole transferred down, I then used the plastic carrier sheet to further burnish over the top. At this point, I took out my embossing medium again, and I'm going to go over the top of this stencil, but I'm only going to use the word jardin, I think it's pronounced. I believe it means garden, and I'm just going to be going over that particular design there. When you're doing a raised stencil with embossing medium, remember to lift your stencil straight up, don't slide it off. I'm then going to reposition the stencil, and I'm going to go over the top of the text and the year down the bottom. Now I wasn't 100% happy with how the smaller text turned out at this point, and I was actually worried that it crowded the design, so I actually removed it while I had to think about it. And then I grabbed this other piece from the same transfer, and I'm going to cut it apart because I want to spread these roses a little bit more and change the direction. So this one I'm going to be putting in the top right hand corner, and the other one I'm still having a bit of a think about how I'm going to position it. I'm going to peel off the backing of the design for the right there and then position it, and just as same as before, just rubbing and burnishing that down. Next, I'm going to be adding the other transfer up the top there, and again just burnishing that down. You can see that the design is unfinished on the right hand side there. I am going to be piecing that back together with some of the bits that I have cut off. I just wanted to position it a little bit differently. I didn't want to obscure the text down the bottom, so I had to rethink the design a little bit, but that's something to keep in mind. You can reorganize your transfers to suit the project that you're working with. I decided at this stage that I would try adding that other text, and I went in a little bit lighter with the embossing medium because it is a smaller text design, and it definitely worked a little bit better this time. Once I was finished adding the embossing medium, I did decide to add this little scrap of transfer on the left hand side there, just to bring the design up and to the left a little bit more. After this, I then sealed the entire book with satin clear coat. And here's a look at our spring book. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I definitely tried a few different things with the raised stenciling, and I felt like less was more with this. I didn't want to go over the top. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my second project, I'm going to be using this coffee jar that I have repurposed. I'm going to be priming it with Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in grey. This time I'm applying the primer with a little makeup sponge. I like to do this over the top of glass surfaces and smooth surfaces because it won't show brush strokes, and it also gives more of an eggshell finish. I'll be doing 2 coats of this and then letting it dry overnight. It's very important to give these sorts of pieces enough dry time so that that primer can do its job. Next, I'm going to be using Redesign's Salon de la Paix mold. I'm using the design on the right hand side there. I'm going to dust it with cornstarch first. This is a very intricate design, so cornstarch is definitely a very big help when it comes to getting your clay to release. So I've dusted that really well. I'm going to tap out the excess, and then I'm going to start working my DAS air dry clay into that design, and again just pushing the excess clay out until I am happy with how that looks. I'm then going to bend and flex the mold, and then I will flip it over, and you can see I have a plastic sheet underneath, and then I'm pulling that mold back, curving it back. I had to change direction here to get the bow design out, and I did have a little bit of breakage, but overall it held together pretty well. I'm then going to add my Sealy's Quickset wood glue to the jar. I'm spreading that out. It's easier for me to add the glue to this surface as opposed to trying to get it all over the intricate details of that casting. You can see I used the plastic mat there to help me transfer the design over as well. Now I'm going to make sure there's enough glue behind the bow design as well up the top, and then I will start piecing back together the couple of breakages that we had. After that, I will use a wet wipe to tidy up any of the excess glue. I let the casting dry overnight, and now I'm coming in with Paint Couture's Purple Haze. I'm actually going to pour a little bit out into a plastic container, and then I am going to be using Paint Couture's Cozy Beige. I'm adding a 2:1 ratio here. I want to create a lighter purple. So I did 2 parts Purple Haze, 1 part Cozy Beige, and now I'm going to go over the top of the entire outside of the jar. I'm applying the paint in a dabbing and stippling motion. This is also going to help reduce the appearance of brush strokes and give us more of that eggshell finish. And I'm going to be doing 2 coats of this paint to get the coverage that I want. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Farmhouse Linen Chalk Paint, and I'm going to be going over the top of the casting that we added. I'm just going over the casting specifically. I'm not letting it go down the sides. I've got my brush held at an almost horizontal angle really, because I don't want it to go down the sides. I just want to focus on the top sections. You can see how adding that beautiful white paint is really bringing out all of the details in that beautiful mold. So I ended up doing 1 coat first, and then I came in with a 2nd coat to make sure that it was the coverage that I wanted. I let my paint dry completely, and then I took out IOD's Traditional Pots Transfer. I still have some of the white designs left, so I have taken a piece of text that I think will look great up the top. I've peeled off the backing, and now I am just going to be working in sections to rub and burnish that transfer down. I'm working on a curved surface. I'm also working with a transfer design that's actually shaped in an arch as well, so it's very important that when you're doing this that you do work in sections, that you go slowly and that you don't try and just get it all down at once, because letters can be tricky anyway to transfer because they are so delicate and thin. So you definitely want to take your time. You can see I have made sure that I got the top right hand design down first, then I started working on the word Josephine, and now I'm working my way over to the left. So definitely just take your time with this. I've now repositioned it. That can help as well, going at it from a different angle. And then once I have it all down, I'm using my fingers and the carrier sheet to ensure that everything's down and burnished. I then took another part of that white transfer design and I'm positioning that down the bottom. You can see I also have 2 containers of paint either side of my jar. This is going to help reduce any movement. To seal my jar and the transfers, of course, I'm going to use Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin. You could always use a spray sealer to seal your piece, or perhaps a wax. It's just very important that you add that protection to protect your transfer and obviously your paint. And here's a look at our finished upcycled jar. I definitely embraced the purple in this project and felt like adding the lavender was the perfect choice. Let me know what you think of today's project in the comments. For my final project, I'm going to be giving this sweet little duck a makeover. I loved the shape, but somebody had hand painted on all of those designs, so it had a lot of texture and things that probably wouldn't be hidden very well if I just painted it. So I'm going to take Paint Couture's Crust Medium, and I'm going to put a little bit of that out in a plastic container, and then I'm going to take an equal amount of Paint Couture's Embossing Medium, put that in the same container, and I'm going to stir them together. This is going to thin out the crust medium texture, and we are going to then be able to create a almost stone-like texture on this duck. I'm going to be applying my mixture using a chip brush, and you can see I am applying it in a dabbing and stippling motion. That's definitely the theme today. And I'm going to continue to add that mixture until the entire duck is covered. I'm not, however, going to put it all the way down and underneath the duck, because that may affect how the duck sits on, say, a shelf. So I will be going all the way down as far as you can see, but I would just be painting the base of the duck, not adding any texture. I let the crust mixture dry for several hours, and then I took out Paint Couture's Driftwood Mineral Paint, and I'm going to be applying that over the top of the entire duck. I'm using a dabbing and stippling motion here as well, because that's going to help me get down into all of the crevices that we have created by adding that crust medium. So I'm going to continue to apply this over the entire duck. It actually only took me one coat to get the coverage that I wanted on the top section here, so it had very good coverage, and this mineral paint has a built-in sealer, so it definitely is a one-step paint. If I've inspired you to try any of the Paint Couture products that I used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. Once the driftwood mineral paint was completely dry, I then took out Fusion's liming wax. This has a white tint to it. I'm going to start working that liming wax into the details, into the texture that we created with the crust medium that we added, and then I am going to be pulling back some of it. My vision for this piece was that it was an old stone statue that has sat in the garden over time, and it has gained some age by sitting out in the weather, and I really feel like adding this liming wax helps to achieve that. It's just a very subtle white look. If you wanted it to be a bit more dramatic, you could come in and add a little bit of green for some moss, but I wanted to keep this pretty neutral, so we're just going to be adding the liming wax. You can see I'm then using a microfiber cloth to pull back some of the excess. This is definitely a good option, as when I started using the paper towel, the rough texture that we added sort of ripped the paper towel, so the microfiber cloth makes that job a lot easier. If you don't have access to liming wax or any sort of white wax, you could create a paint wash using a water-based white paint and thin it out with water and apply it in a similar nature. I do, however, suggest that you seal your project before you do this. And here's our finished duck statue. This was a quick and easy flip, but I think it was very effective. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video and that it's inspired you to perhaps try raised stenciling or adding texture with crust medium. Let me know if you have a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find most of the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.